Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City joins us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Because, Mike, on a week where we had high school football last weekend, right? We had the Eagles announcing their roster. The Phillies have won 5 straight games. But the biggest thing in the area, if you get the feedback from the listeners and the fans, is people all have something to say about this Ben Simmons fiasco, Mike.
Well, a fiasco of its own making, I think. Nobody told Joel Embiid to go on Twitter today and start tweeting out his thoughts on the matter. I mean, I woke up this morning, I thought Joel Embiid had been traded to the Mets with the advice he was giving fans. It's hard to believe where this thing has sort of gone in a couple of days.
Yeah, and Mike, I mentioned this also earlier, and I want to ask your thoughts on this really quick. There are certain people as a general principle, right, that we listen to and we trust. Certain people who cover teams, certain people who cover sports, and it's becoming more and more obvious that you just can't listen to certain people, right? Like if Shams or Woj or someone like Keith Pompey, if they report on something, that's one thing. These random people online who are putting stuff out there are really causing way more problems than there really should be.
Yeah, I mean, you got to just let the situation play out, right? I think everybody is kind of doing their best to kind of report what's going on. But, let's think about what's unfolded in the past couple of days. Is anything happening that's really surprising or that we didn't already know 2 minutes after the Sixers were eliminated by the Atlanta Hawks? At that point, we probably knew that Ben Simmons was headed for, and the Sixers were headed for a divorce. And if you look at it, you can probably see that Ben Simmons probably wanted out of Philadelphia, and Philadelphia probably wants to part ways with Ben Simmons. So all this stuff is noise around kind of what we already know is that Ben Simmons is going to be playing for somebody else next year, not because he's a bad NBA player, but because he's not a good fit with Joel Embiid.
Also, Mike, what about the fact that, Embiid himself mentioned in his Twitter string that he said, listen, I'm motivated when people tell me something I can't do something, but some people are not built like that. I think he's specifically talking about Ben Simmons, Mike. I think that Ben Simmons is somebody who he has said himself to the media, the guys like you, when you go in the press conferences, I'm a 3-time All-Star. He reads off his resume like he has to remind people who he is. I think Ben Simmons is very content where he is in life. I don't know if he really wants to grow anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Ben Simmons wants or what he wants to do, but I will say this about Embiid's tweets this morning. I remain constantly amazed that professional athletes and professional sports teams in general, which are multi-million-dollar, in some cases billion-dollar corporations, don't have somebody, don't appear to run their tweets by somebody and say, hey, do you think this is a good idea if I should send this? Because Embiid comes out today and begins to tweet and says, well, there is no rift between me and Ben Simmons. Everything is great. We just didn't get it done. We want to play together. And then he says, well, the fans got to do better. Because I still remember being booed 2 years ago, retweets a clip from, WIP where some fan says he's overweight and out of shape. And then he comes out in a final tweet and says, oh, by the way, I can take the criticism. It motivates me to do better, but not everybody's built that way. Well, everybody is interpreting that as a shot at Ben Simmons. So you come out in the first tweet and say there is no rift between me and Ben Simmons, and then you take a shot at him in the last tweet. You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. Mike McGarry for the Press of Atlantic City joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 at AC Press McGarry on Twitter. So with all that being said, Mike, when you look at what's going on with Sixers and Ben Simmons, what do you think happens next? What are you reading on the tea leaves?
Oh, he's going to be traded. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, he's going to be traded, and we'll see what that trade is or how that trade unfolds, whether it happens in training camp, whether he reports to training camp. I know now Keith Pompey, excellent reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, reported that, Simmons says he won't show up for training camp. We'll see. Maybe, we'll see what happens. I do know that, the Sixers are slated to pay him $30 million this season. So, we'll see if he shows up or doesn't show up. We'll see how it unfolds. But it's clear that Ben Simmons is going to be traded at some point. It's just a matter of what he is, kind of traded for. And I've always felt all along, I maintained all along, that the Sixers aren't going to be in a position where they can just send Ben Simmons somewhere and get what they need back. They're going to have to either get a third team involved or package Ben Simmons with Maxey, Thibault, and several draft picks to get a player in here who can create offense for himself and teammates in the fourth quarter of playoff games.
Mike, do you think that all these reports are going to hurt the Sixers' return and what they could have gotten for Ben Simmons? Have they lost leverage in some of these trade discussions?
I don't think they've lost any leverage. I mean, again, people watch the playoffs. People in the NBA watch the playoffs. We saw what Ben Simmons was in the playoffs. The NBA guys are smart. They see that he does not fit with Embiid here. But does he fit with a team of shooters like Golden State? Boy, he'd be pretty good there if he was playing with those guys. So if you're thinking, and I never thought it from day one, if you were the type of person, and we've heard some of the supposed offers the Sixers have asked for, if you thought you were dealing Simmons and getting a king's ransom in return, I think you were crazy from the start. I never thought that. I thought that it was going to be the Sixers having to pack in stuff, the Sixers having to throw Thibault in, the Sixers having to throw Maxey in, the Sixers having to throw 3 or 4 first-round draft picks in to get back the player that they wanted with Simmons. I never saw it after you watched the playoffs. I mean, the guy was benched in the fourth quarter playoff games. So, I mean, these people that thought you were going to trade him and get 4 or 5 guys back, it's ridiculous. I thought it was going to be the other way from the beginning. So in my eyes, his value hasn't diminished, maybe in some people's eyes, but in my eyes, it kind of is what it is right now.
I'm only asking this as a devil's advocate question. This is not my opinion, but I'm wondering, were some of those trade demands, was Daryl Morey, pulling the whole, I'm going to ask for something that was too much and then hopefully get something a little less than that?
Well, possibly. I mean, that's negotiations, right? Ask for the moon and see what you can get back. So who knows whether they were true or not. Maybe they're testing the market. Maybe they wanted to see, hey, what is he worth? Things like that. So, but again, I always thought that it was going to have to be that Simmons was going to be the lead figure, the number one figure in a package that the Sixers were going to have to get a player back that could put them over the top. I always thought it was going to be the Sixers giving up more than they got back if you just count bodies and assets, basically.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City joins us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Check out all of his coverage of the Sixers, Phillies, high school sports, and more over at pressofatlanticcity.com. Mike, I did want to ask you about the Phillies because, this team is now all of a sudden winning, and it seems like the majority of fans don't care. But I can't get over the fact that this team, they couldn't score runs for weeks on end, and now, since August 26th, they've scored 7 or more runs in every game, and then with a bizarro lineup last night, they scored 12 runs. They've won 5 games in a row. I mean, did this team just have to go find themselves again? What is going on here?
No, it's the schedule, right? It's the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Washington Nationals, and give them credit because they've done what they've had to do. I mean, they finally straightened up and took 3 or 4 against the Diamondbacks, and the Nationals I even hesitate to insult AAA because I thought the Phillies played with a AAA kind of lineup last night. Maybe the Nationals are a AA type of team. So, and we talked about this, right? We said this was the key stretch for the Phillies, and they have taken advantage. They had the Diamondbacks and the Nationals. The Braves are out there playing the Dodgers, who I think went 21-6 in August. Took the first 2 from the Braves, and the lead's down to 2.5. It could be down to 2 tonight, if the Dodgers beat the Braves again. So the Phillies have done what they've had to do to get back in this race. but I think it's the schedule that they've fattened themselves up against offensively. And a big series coming up, right? They go to Miami, which has always been a house of horrors for them, and then the Brewers. So we'll see how it unplays from there. But somebody asked me the other day, are the Phillies in a pennant race? Yeah, they're in a pennant race. The math says they're in a pennant race. They're in a pennant race. They're 2.5 games back with a month to go. So they're playing meaningful baseball games every night.
And speaking of that schedule, Mike, listen, over the weekend in Miami, it doesn't get any better than throwing out there Gibson, Suarez, and Wheeler in Miami. I mean, your odds go up, and you only face one of Milwaukee's big three pitchers in Milwaukee. You got Woodruff on Monday, but you don't face Burns. There's no Peralta out there right now. So, in many ways, this road trip is still looking, pretty good for them to keep, stacking up wins.
Yeah, absolutely. However, again, let's keep in mind they are the Phillies. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and give them more credit than they deserve. Let's just take it on a day-by-day basis. I think one thing they've proven is they can't look at any game on the schedule and say, well, that's a W. So they're just not good enough to do that. So we'll see what happens. But, it was looking pretty bleak, a week ago. And we said this was a key part of the schedule, a key chance for them to get back in the race. And that's exactly what they've done. So give them a lot of credit. 2.5 back as September begins. Obviously you'd rather be leading the division, but, you're in a pennant race.
One more thing for you, Mike, before I let you go. I want to ask, are the Phillies going to be able to sustain this because of the fact of, we see Hoskins is done for the year. Who knows when Zach Eflin's coming back? This lineup is shuffling guys in and out because of injuries all over the place. I mean, do they have what it takes to survive all this bend? I mean, I know the roster's expanded to 28, but man, I mean, I had to look up who Matt Vierling was yesterday. I had to do research on him.
Exactly. Yeah, it is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. The one good thing for the Phillies, although Eflin is out, they are still throwing out quality starters in Nola, Wheeler, Suarez, and Gibson. I can't say too much about or can't say enough, however, about how big Gibson and Suarez have been sort of solidifying that back end of the rotation. So you're still throwing four quality starters out there, and that's giving you a chance every day. With a lot of days off in September, maybe they can kind of pitch around Matt Moore a little bit. He wasn't good last night. They still won the game. But the fact that they can throw 4 quality starters out there every night, gives them a chance to win a game, and then maybe a piece together. And then the other guy I think you got to give the huge credit to is just Bryce Harper. We talk about, people not getting it, people not performing, people not living up to his contract. Bryce Harper is carrying the Phillies right now. He hasn't made a wrong move since he's been here. He hasn't said an incorrect thing since he's been here. He's really embraced what it means to play in a Northeast city where sports are important. And he deserves all the credit in the world because he's really kind of put the Phillies on his back here the past month. And again, I can't say enough about what he's done, especially when you see what's happening up in New York and you see some of the Embiid tweets today. Bryce Harper looks a little bit better and better when you hear him talk after games about what it means to play in Philadelphia for his teammates, the organization, and fans.
Yeah, Harper's becoming a legend in Philadelphia at this point. It's pretty awesome to watch. He's Mike McGarry. He'll be back on Friday's edition of the Sports Bash. Follow him on Twitter at @ACPressMcGarry and all the coverage over at pressofatlanticcity.com. Mike, always appreciate the conversation.
All right, Josh, we'll see you later. Thanks.